Sarah Thompson stared at the email on her computer screen, her hands shaking, her world crumbling around her. Effective immediately, your employment with Prestige Realty is terminated. How had it come to this? Just last month, she'd been named top agent of the year. Now she was being accused of fraud, her reputation in flames, her career in ruins. But the worst was yet to come. Little did Sarah know, the source of her destruction was sitting at her own dining table, wearing a mask of sisterly concern. Hi there, I'm Goldie and welcome to Goldie's Love Stories. I hope you enjoy today's story. Sarah had always been a star in the world of selling houses. At 35, she was the youngest top agent at Prestige Realty. Everyone knew her for her big smile, her talent for seeing a house's potential, and how much she cared about her clients. Her office wall was covered in awards, certificates, and happy photos with families who had bought homes from her. "You've got the magic touch, Sarah," her coworker Tom often joked. "Everything you touch gets sold." Sarah would laugh it off, saying it was just hard work and really caring about her clients. But deep down, she felt proud. She'd built this career from nothing, starting as a receptionist and working her way up through pure determination and hard work. Her personal life seemed just as perfect. 5 years ago, she'd married Michael, a software engineer with kind eyes and a quiet strength that balanced out her outgoing personality perfectly. Or so she thought. It was a warm Sunday afternoon when the first cracks in her perfect life started to show. Sarah was hosting a family barbecue in their backyard. The air was filled with the sizzling sound of grilling burgers and the laughter of their friends and family. "Sarah, dear, these burgers are amazing," said Rachel, Michael's sister, as she walked over to the grill. "Almost as impressive as that new house you're selling. The Saunders mansion, right?" Sarah smiled, always happy to talk about work. "Yes, it's a beautiful house. The Saunders are wonderful people too. I hope we can finish the sale next week." Rachel's eyes sparkled with something Sarah couldn't quite understand. Was it admiration? Or something not so nice? My, Rachel said in a sweet voice, "You sure work fast, don't you? I wonder how you get all these big, expensive houses to sell." There was something in Rachel's voice that made Sarah feel uncomfortable. She laughed nervously. "Oh, just hard work and a bit of luck." "Luck, indeed," Rachel said softly, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. As Rachel walked away, Sarah felt a chill despite the warm afternoon sun. She tried to ignore it, thinking it was just her imagination. If only she'd known then how that simple conversation would be the start of her downfall. Over the next few weeks, Sarah noticed a small change in the way people treated her. Clients she'd been working with for months suddenly became unsure about signing contracts. Coworkers who used to greet her warmly now gave her strange looks in the hallways. One morning, as she was getting coffee in the break room, she overheard a whispered conversation that made her blood run cold. "I heard she's been lying about the houses she's selling," whispered Amy, a new agent. "No way," gasped Tom. "Sarah? But she's always been so honest." "Well, my cousin's friend is in the Saunders neighborhood watch, and she swears she saw Sarah sneaking around the property at night, probably making the house seem bigger or hiding problems. You know how it is." Sarah's hand shook, spilling hot coffee on her clean white shirt. She wanted to burst into the room, to defend herself, to ask where these crazy accusations were coming from. But shock kept her frozen in place. That evening, she talked to Michael over dinner. "Honey, something strange is happening at work. People are whispering, clients are backing out, and I don't know why." Michael reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "I'm sure it's nothing, love. You're the best agent they have. They're probably just jealous." His words made her feel better, but the worry in her stomach remained. She couldn't stop thinking about how Rachel had acted strangely at the barbecue. Could her sister-in-law be behind this? The next day, Sarah decided to talk to Rachel directly. She drove to Rachel's clothing store during lunch, her heart beating fast as she pushed open the door, setting off a cheerful bell. "Sarah, what a nice surprise," Rachel said, her smile wide but her eyes cautious. "What brings you here in the middle of the day?" Sarah got straight to the point. Rachel, have you been spreading rumors about me? Rachel's face looked innocent. Rumors? Darling, what are you talking about? Don't pretend you don't know, Rachel. Suddenly, everyone at work thinks I'm cheating somehow. Clients are backing out. And it all started after we talked at the barbecue. Rachel's laugh was like sharp glass. Oh, Sarah, you can't be serious. Why would I do such a thing? Your family. But there was something in Rachel's eyes, a quick look of. Was it guilt? Happiness at Sarah's trouble? Sarah couldn't be sure. She left the store feeling more confused and worried than ever. That night, she tried to talk to Michael about her worries. I think Rachel might be spreading these rumors about me, she said, her voice quiet. Michael's reaction surprised her. Instead of being concerned, his face became angry. Sarah, that's a serious thing to say. Rachel would never do something like that. She's my sister, for goodness sake. But Michael, you don't understand. The timing, the way she acted at the barbecue. Enough! Michael interrupted her, his voice sharp. I won't listen to you saying bad things about my sister like this. You're probably just stressed about work. Don't take it out on Rachel. Sarah fell silent, feeling hurt and confused. Why wasn't Michael on her side? Why couldn't he see what was happening? The final blow came a week later. Sarah was called into her boss's office. Her heart sinking as she saw the serious looks on the faces of Mr. Johnson and the company's lawyer. Sarah, please sit down, Mr. Johnson said, his voice heavy. We've received some troubling information about how you do business. Sarah's mouth went dry. What kind of information? The lawyer slid a folder across the desk. Inside were printouts of social media posts, emails, even a fake review from a client. All saying Sarah was a dishonest agent who lied about house values and hid problems to make sales. This is ridiculous, Sarah exclaimed, her voice rising in panic. None of this is true. I would never. I'm sorry, Sarah, Mr. Johnson interrupted, but there's too much evidence against you. We have no choice but to fire you starting right now. We'll be sending this information to the real estate board for them to look into further. Sarah felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath her. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a bad dream. But the sad yet firm looks on her now former co-workers' faces told her it was all too real. In a daze, she packed up her office, the happy photos of satisfied clients now seeming to mock her. As she walked out of Prestige Realty for the last time, box of belongings in her arms, Sarah felt as if she was leaving behind not just her job, but her entire identity. She sat in her car in the parking lot, tears running down her face, wondering how her life had fallen apart so quickly. But she didn't know that the worst betrayal was yet to come. As she started her car, trying to be strong as she prepared to face Michael with the terrible news, Sarah had no idea what would come next. As she pulled into her driveway, Sarah took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. The house she and Michael had bought together, once a symbol of their bright future, now felt like a stranger's home. She sat in the car for a few moments, gathering her courage. How do you tell your husband that your career, the thing you've worked so hard for, has been destroyed by lies? Sarah walked through the house, her footsteps echoing in the empty rooms. Where was Michael? He usually got home before her. Just as panic started to set in, she heard the sound of a key in the lock. Michael walked in, his face tired and drawn. Sarah? What are you doing home so early? The moment their eyes met, Michael knew something was terribly wrong. Sarah burst into tears, the stress and fear of the day finally overwhelming her. Between sobs, she managed to tell him everything. The accusations, the lost clients, and finally her firing. Michael listened in stunned silence, his face a mask of disbelief. When Sarah finished her story, she looked up at him, desperate for the support and love she so desperately needed. But the words that came out of his mouth shattered her world even further. Sarah, Michael said slowly, his voice strained, I don't know what to believe anymore. Rachel called me earlier today. She said you might try to blame her for your problems at work. She told me you've been acting strangely for months, that you've been stressed and taking risks at work. Sarah felt as if she'd been slapped. You believe her? Over your own wife? Michael, I'm telling you the truth. Rachel is behind all of this. But Michael's face remained doubtful. I don't know, Sarah. Rachel's never lied to me before. And you have been working so much lately, always chasing the next big sale. Maybe you did something without realizing it was wrong. Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her own husband, the person who was supposed to support her no matter what, was choosing to believe his sister over her. The betrayal cut deeper than anything she'd felt before. How can you say that? Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. After everything we've been through together, how can you not trust me? Michael ran his hands through his hair, frustration evident on his face. I don't know what to think anymore, Sarah. This is all happening so fast. Maybe we both need some time to think things through. As Michael turned and walked out of the room, leaving Sarah alone with her tears and broken dreams, she realized that losing her job was just the beginning. Sarah sank to the floor, her back against the wall, feeling more alone than she ever had in her life. As the sun set outside, casting long shadows through the windows, she wondered how she would ever find the strength to fight back against the lies that had destroyed everything she held dear. The weeks following Sarah's termination were a blur of sleepless nights and tear-stained pillows. Her once perfect life had crumbled around her, leaving her grasping for any semblance of normalcy. Michael's continued skepticism cut deeper than any accusation from her former colleagues. I just don't understand, Sarah, Michael said one evening, his voice a mixture of frustration and disappointment. Why would Rachel do this to you? It doesn't make any sense. Sarah's patience, worn thin by weeks of doubt and betrayal, finally snapped. Why does it have to make sense, Michael? Why can't you just believe me? I'm your wife. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael's eyes, once filled with love and admiration, now held only uncertainty and a hint of something Sarah couldn't quite place. Was it suspicion? Realizing that she couldn't rely on Michael's support, Sarah decided to take matters into her own hands. She spent days poring over every transaction, every client interaction, searching for any shred of evidence that could clear her name. It was during one of these late-night investigations that Sarah stumbled upon something odd. A series of emails between Rachel and one of Sarah's former clients, dated just days before the rumors started circulating. With trembling hands, Sarah opened the first email. Dear Mr. Saunders, it read, I hope this email finds you well. I wanted to bring something to your attention regarding your recent property listing with Prestige Realty. Sarah's heart raced as she read on. The email detailed supposed irregularities in Sarah's handling of the Saunders listing, hinting at inflated property values and hidden structural issues. It was all there. The seeds of every rumor that had led to her downfall. Oh my God, Sarah whispered, her voice shaking. It really was Rachel all along. Armed with this newfound evidence, Sarah confronted Michael the next morning. I have proof, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Rachel has been sabotaging me. Look at these emails. Michael's face paled as he read through the evidence. This can't be real, he stammered. Rachel wouldn't do this. There has to be some explanation. Sarah felt a surge of anger at Michael's continued denial. There is an explanation, Michael. Your sister is jealous and manipulative, and she's been trying to ruin me. And you've been helping her by refusing to believe me. The argument that followed was explosive. Years of pent-up resentments and unspoken grievances came pouring out. By the end, they were both exhausted, their voices hoarse from shouting. I need some time to think, Michael said finally, grabbing his keys. I'll be back later. As the door slammed behind him, Sarah felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. For the first time in weeks, she knew exactly what she had to do. The next morning, Sarah marched into Prestige Realty, her head held high. She demanded a meeting with Mr. Johnson and the board of directors, armed with a folder full of evidence, not just of Rachel's manipulation, but of her own impeccable record and client testimonials. I understand if you can't give me my job back, Sarah said, her voice steady as she addressed the stunned room. "But I won't let my reputation be destroyed by lies and manipulation. I've worked too hard for too long to let that happen." The meeting lasted for hours. Sarah presented her case with a passion and eloquence that reminded everyone present why she had been their top agent for years. By the end, even the most skeptical board members were convinced of her innocence. "Ms. Thompson," Mr. Johnson said, his voice heavy with regret, "we owe you a profound apology. We should have investigated more thoroughly before taking such drastic action. We'd like to offer you your position back, effective immediately, with a substantial raise and a public statement clearing your name." Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders, but she knew her fight wasn't over yet. She still had to confront Rachel and, more importantly, decide what to do about her marriage. That evening, Sarah invited Rachel over, ostensibly to clear the air. When Rachel arrived, her face a mask of fake concern, Sarah was ready. "I know what you did, Rachel," Sarah said calmly, sliding the folder of evidence across the table. "I have proof of every email, every phone call, every lie you told to ruin my career." Rachel's mask slipped, revealing a mixture of shock and defiance. "You don't understand," she hissed. "You had everything. The perfect job, the perfect husband. You didn't deserve any of it. And you thought you did?" Sarah asked, her voice tinged with pity. "Rachel, I worked hard for everything I have. If you wanted success, you could have achieved it too, instead of trying to tear me down." As Rachel's carefully constructed web of lies unraveled, Sarah felt no joy, only a profound sadness for the family that had been torn apart by jealousy and deceit. When Michael returned home later that night, he found Sarah sitting calmly at the kitchen table, a packed suitcase by her side. The folder of evidence lay open before her, its contents spread across the polished wood surface. "Sarah, what's going on?" Michael asked, his eyes darting between the suitcase and the papers on the table. Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Your sister has been systematically destroying my life. And you've been helping her by refusing to believe me." She pushed another document towards him, a series of text messages between Rachel and a former colleague, detailing their plan to discredit Sarah. Michael read them, his face a mask of confusion and disbelief. "But why?" he finally asked, looking up at Sarah. "Why would Rachel do this?" Sarah felt a flicker of hope. Maybe now, faced with irrefutable evidence, Michael would finally see the truth. But his next words shattered that hope into a million pieces. "You must have done something to provoke her, Sarah," Michael said, his voice hardening. "Rachel wouldn't just do this for no reason." Sarah stared at him, incredulous. "Are you serious right now? You're still defending her?" Michael ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every movement. "Look, I'm not saying what she did was right, but, well, you have been pretty focused on your career lately. Always talking about your latest big sale, your awards, your success. So I deserve to have my entire life destroyed because I was proud of my achievements?" Sarah's voice rose in disbelief. "That's not what I'm saying," Michael backpedaled, "but the damage was done. It's just, you can be pretty arrogant sometimes, Sarah. Always going on about your job, your clients. Maybe that made Rachel feel insecure. You know she's been struggling with her boutique." Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. The man she had loved, trusted, built a life with, was standing in their kitchen, shifting the blame for his sister's actions onto her. "So let me get this straight," Sarah said, her voice dangerously calm. "Your sister systematically destroyed my career, my reputation, everything I've worked for, because she felt insecure? And somehow that's my fault." Michael had the grace to look uncomfortable, but he didn't back down. "I'm just saying, maybe if you'd been a little more considerate of other people's feelings " "Considerate?" Sarah exploded, years of pent-up frustration finally boiling over. "I have been nothing but considerate. I've supported you through every career change, every hobby, every midlife crisis. I've bent over backwards trying to make your family like me. And this is what I get in return." She stood up, pushing her chair back with a screech. "You know what, Michael? I'm done. I'm done trying to prove myself to you, to Rachel, to everyone. I want a divorce. The word hung in the air between them, heavy and final. Michael's face went through a range of emotions. Shock, anger, fear, and finally a stubborn resolve. You're overreacting, Sarah, he said, his voice cold. This is just a misunderstanding. If you just apologize to Rachel Dash. Apologize? Sarah laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. For what? For being successful? For working hard? For believing that my husband would support me? She picked up the suitcase, her movements decisive. I'll have my lawyer contact you. I suggest you find somewhere else to stay tonight. I need some time alone in this house to figure out my next steps. Michael's face hardened. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the kitchen. A few moments later, Sarah heard the front door slam. As the sound of Michael's car faded into the distance, Sarah sank back into her chair, the weight of everything that had happened finally crashing down on her. She had lost her job, her reputation, and now her marriage. But strangely, instead of despair, she felt a sense of liberation. For years, she had been trying to fit herself into the mold of the perfect wife, the perfect sister-in-law, all while excelling in her career. She had dimmed her own light to make others comfortable, and still it hadn't been enough. As she sat there in the quiet kitchen, Sarah made a vow to herself. No more shrinking, no more apologizing for her success. She would rebuild her life on her own terms, surrounded by people who celebrated her achievements instead of resenting them. The road ahead would be challenging, but Sarah knew she was equal to the task. After all, she had already weathered the worst storm of her life and come out stronger. Whatever the future held, she would face it with the same grace, determination, and unwavering belief in herself that had seen her through her darkest days. As the first light of dawn crept through the kitchen window, Sarah stood up, ready to face her new reality. The betrayal that had nearly broken her had instead become the catalyst for her rebirth. And for that, in a strange way, she was grateful. She picked up her phone, dialing a familiar number. Mr. Johnson? It's Sarah Thompson. I've been thinking about your job offer. I'm ready to come back, but on my terms. I think it's time we discussed that partnership we talked about last year. As she spoke, outlining her vision for the future, Sarah felt a smile spread across her face. This wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning of a brand new chapter. Thanks for watching. How would you rate this story? Give it 1 to 5 stars in the comments and let me know what you thought. This is a brand new channel, and your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed the story, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you never miss an episode. Your likes, comments, and shares help this community grow, and I'd be so grateful to have you along for the journey. See you next time.